Hello and welcome to part 2 of the sequential growth video on numbers, on the basic foundations, and the general template flow that everything kind of grows through. I would highly recommend watching part 1. I will link it in the description below or add it to the comments if you find this on BitChute. Just because I'm not going to go through the initial growth that I already talked about, which is sort of how to build the ladder, metaphysical ladder, that I compare this to, sequential growth to. I'm going to talk about climbing the ladder right now in the most basic form, and basically these are stages and phases that all things grow through. So I feel almost crazy without going into a whole prelude here. But I will just say, if you are finding this video for the first time for me, welcome. Thanks for checking out my channel. My name is Allie with A. Marie Speaks. I'm going through a bit of this numbers workbook that I've made on sequential growth. If you're interested in that, I do offer it completely for free. You can find my email below if you're interested in it. I talk more about it in the first video, and I'm sure you'll thank me for not going into it again. Anyways, the basic foundation of understanding what I'm talking about here is that numbers and growth, numbers indicate growth, and they are, I know lots of people like to say man-created numbers. I personally do not believe that, but we're free to believe whatever we want in this wonderful place in creation. That's what we're here, discovery of manyness. I would like to just put it out there as one of the potentials. I'm not claiming that it is any more true than anything else. I have no, pillared sort of aspect of my own beliefs over others, but I think God source, creator of this beautiful, miraculous playscape here, is as fond of numbers as I am. So yeah, I'll just say that. Numbers themselves can be seen as quantitative values, of course, which quantitative has to do with the quantity of a thing. How much, how many. We use them to count 5 cars, 2 pencils, they showcase in a physical sense the amount of a thing. And this is one viable half of what numbers are. There is many different avenues and things to be discovered and understood and used with numbers in this sense, and I will totally be talking about this at other times in math and all and that kind of thing, all of its infinite uses and beauty. The other side of numbers is their qualitative value, and the fact that they have a quality representation. They talk about a concept. They showcase through symbology an entire wealth of knowledge, an entire book on their own. And so when we understand and we can read and we know that there's a book behind a number, it takes looking at numbers, it takes mathematics, it takes measurement, it takes the physical world and brings it into the spiritual world. It helps the mind remember, oh yes, I'm a bridge. Oh yes, connect. Oh right, these things, these parallels, we're all the one. How silly that I had divided it so separately. They have their own righteous divisions, of course, as polarities showcase. Head and tail on a coin are much different, and they cannot be each other in any way. In fact, they're defined by each other, and yet they are one coin. We have coin, we have currency, we use a coin for a reason, right? They, hot and cold, yeah, they are very different and they feel very different, but they are a temperature, they're a measurement of temperature. They show one thing, which is the quality of temperature, right? So numbers in themselves have this grander vision and a deeper integration, that when we understand the qualitative sense of numeric value, is what I'm kind of calling this, books behind the numbers, you know, when we look at everything, it changes. To me, I see it much more lively, much more alive. And the things which don't enliven through being looked at in this way, in this remembrance of what I believe is a deeper understanding. It's an interlocking with why God loves numbers, why Creator Source is doing all of this, putting purpose into the material sense in such a deep-seated injection. It's like, it's the underlying truth. You know, I just see it as that's why I love to call it the organic template. And I think all of organic productivity works and flows through this way. It makes perfect sense. And it's totally truth-based. Like I said in the first video, this is not my own, I don't name claim to this. This is, you know, organic knowledge. I would never name claim to the water cycle outside. Who could ever say you didn't invent the water cycle? You didn't invent the tree's life cycle? You know what I mean? Yeah, we put a name, we put some arrows in between what we see and we observe happening there, and we have a name and a label for the entire cyclic flow now. We've realized the separateness, and we've segregated it and observed it and witnessed it and labeled it. But descriptions don't give purpose. They don't understand sometimes. Even they miss it completely. And they can be observed and written down and made and lack it totally. But when we choose to infuse purpose into what we look at all times, when we remember it resides within everything, it's in the architecture itself, you know, then it's a lot easier to remember when we look at complex things. And just like problems, this is why leaning into this foundational fundamentals of sequential growth, understanding what numeric values are, it becomes a lifesaver, becomes the railing up the stairs, you know, through hard times, through difficult problems, through new inventions, through innovation, through problem solving with others. Because you remember, oh yeah, it's one thing. Oh yeah, it's a process. Oh yeah, there's a flow here. Let me stop, observe, witness, and accept where I'm at, and then I'll know how to go. Or conversely, how to descend back. Because this is the other thing that I will teach and later and talk about, but you know, it's not just forward. You know, it's give and take, it's ebb and flow. There's always ascension and descension. The torus function isn't just this way. It's this. It's happening at many different layers. Yes, each system of a torus has a functional either overall balance of a flow this way or this way. There is still a diverse multidimensionality to the systems at hand within that fractal systematic being. And each one is doing a bounce back, an ebb and flow. But it's the overall balance that creates the reverberation of the whole that's seen from a distance. You know, just like everything's vibrating, but it's happening so fast that we see this formation, they say. You know, it's the same kind of trying to understand these concepts sometimes can take time. But anyways, when we have these when we remember the foundation fundamentals, and you hear them within yourself, and you remember, oh yeah, I know all these things. Oh yeah, I knew that. Oh yeah, I know that. It creates confidence. It creates that ease to lean into the railing within yourself, within, you know, your connection to God or your higher self or an ancestor, a loved one, perhaps you like to envision this as or feel it is true to you. All are acceptable. All are wonderful. In fact, all are potentialities. If we remember again, this is a playscape of infinite potentialities to be had at all coordinate points. Then we can also more comfortably see what's happening. Anyways, I talked a little bit about the grid in the first video. If you've already seen that, I'm sure I'll talk about more getting into that later. But for now, let's talk about the basic fundamentals. So we actually have this part 2 video for about the measuring stick, like I like to call it, and the first linear view. Now, what we're going to place upon the linear view and understand about this sort of A to B measuring stick is that we have 1 to 9 on it. And 0 in itself is outside of this, it's, you know, the potentialities, it's the void, it's that creator consciousness space that we sort of just hold open. It's sort of the space we draw around where we put the measuring stick in, if you can understand that. And so it's always there, it's always present, and yet it has everything and nothing to do with the measuring stick and the 1 through 9 stage. One is the initial idea, the first thing to be had, you know. It's an unknown, a known purpose or a designation, you know. It's what I like to call sacred boundary of isness. What does that mean, right? But that's what I mean. You know, it's a thing. It's you. It's anything definable. It can be an idea. It can be an entire systematic concept. It can be, whatever you choose it to be. Person, place, or thing, basically. Now, 2 is everything that it is not. 2 is the opposite, the opposing. It is, okay, I have this, what isn't it, right? Finding the boundaries and sort of understanding that there's another out there. There's external for the one. You've designated separateness for a reason, source. Now why? How does it compare to others? How is it different from others, right? How is it like others as well? This is all becomes the exploration of number 2. The second phase is, sort of a circumvent around number 1 and defining and discerning what it is and what it is not and how it reacts to what is like it and what is different than it, and I usually say 2 is the stage would be called opposition, but sometimes that can be seen as a sort of attack word, and I don't want to give any undue gravity to negativity, even though, that can be part of it. It is part of it. But when we learn to stand firm boundaries and we learn to stand courageous in strength, nothing can attack us. And when we realize, nothing can really attack us, it can't really hurt us, the thing that whatever is trying to bounce off of our boundaries becomes apparent to us, and then we realize the otherness of it. And if it can't hurt you, what's the hurt in looking at it for what it is, right? That also helps us appreciate the other. It helps us circumvent and create dotted lines in this external third-party space of what other consists of from our perspective, But we should remember to leave that as a dotted lines, not drawing outlines and saying that is that for sure all the time, and it must be that all the time, which is what we get locked into sometimes. And I'll talk about this, about zooming into these and how we get stuck in these stages and phases. And sometimes we don't realize that there's controlled, shadowed aspects at hand that are tricking our creator consciousness and keeping us locked in this inorganic way in phase 1 or in phase 2. I'm going to do a video on a teaching video on every single number, and I think I'll bring that in and talk about those on designated times. But just understand that for the measuring stick version, and I'll get into this when I bring that in a little bit more, this is sort of like, getting into 1.1, 1.5, 1.15, like adding in and that meter stick centimeters and looking at that, and then forgetting that you're in like 1.752 and thinking that, you're in the 7 somewhere. And it gets very diluted and convoluted in that kind of way because you haven't actually ever hit a real mastery in the sense, because you've pigeonholed yourself into the singular, large, whole number 1, where you have complete control cognitively over exploration. You've never actually divvied it up to true 2, which is external, which is another, which is actual external space, third party confirmation to the thing and exploration of the thing in freedom. And that's difficult to do. And somebody who offers up content, somebody who shares things, you know, I know that from an artistic sense, but it's also about how you share your heart, how you share your space, your truths, your life with others around you in relationships. 2 is that sidekick number. 2 is the, you know, when we get into personality numerology and what people usually just kind of like focus on with numbers is like the characteristic traits and stuff like that. It becomes that sort of band together duo, you know, the perfect couples, twin flames and superhero sidekick kind of thing, pairings. And of course it becomes the hero and the villain as well, the sort of need each other but hate each other kind of strange victim bully slave master kind of you know, negative bonding between them. And I'll talk about bonding at another time. You know, like I started off with, when we understand these more qualitative foundational understandings about numbers and working and sharing, we start to look at chemistry, mathematics in such a different way. Such a different way. I'm not going to get carried away in that. Anyways, let's go through. Once we've sort of hashed out similarities and differences and come in a roundabout sort of way of each other, right? 3 comes in. And 3 is new creations, new creative input. The 1 and the 2 see things differently, but also are working towards the same center point. And so they can offer up, you know, spaces that either person hadn't noticed, and together becomes a birthing of new projects, of a new avenue, of new height, right? We bring third dimension into things, and we think about, you know, bringing it into space. It's not just that way and that way, you know what I mean? It's this way as well. It's up and down. We can think of 3 as the beautiful triad of creation. Like I like to think of the number 3 as point of conception and the child, the birth in the newness between a mother and a father. The third being the child brings such new dimensionality to what they called their marriage, what they called their family unit, what they called their group, their oneness. Because when a couple comes together in a real sacred union of marriage, they become a whole unit. They are one. They should be seen as one. They're asking God to view them as one. Is what I thought it was about. Is what I think it is really, truly about. And it's supposed to be, it's not a relinquishment of sovereignty either. It's a unification and an emblazing of the 2. You know, it creates more beauty and depth. It's like it adds more volume to the total being. It's not like one goes inside the other and it's like crunched up. It's like, no, well, we have this sort of other space here now. And then we have a child. It becomes a grander experience because it literally is totally a mishmash of the 2 of you together in an unexpected way. And you have to let it be as it is. It's just as much you as it is that other person. Is just as much a right to its own life, though, as you have a right to your own life. It's such a wonderful, tangible metaphor for the metaphysical. But we should learn to let our masterpieces, let our projects, let our systems, even businesses and industries, projects like that should be let to live out there as the third, as the conception, as the point out there of their own construction and operation, you know, that 1 and 2 interact with. 1 and 2 are freely to come and go through, you know, and that 3 is free to come and go with 1 or 2 and 1 and 2 at any or all times. This is, you know, I like to call it 360-degree full spectrum exchanges, input and output from all angles, trying to be free and available, witnessed, accepted, and honored as they are, whether uncomfortable or comfortable, whether good or bad. You know, doesn't matter what angle of representation things come in or from what magnitude or momentum, but to be accepting of them and to be receptive and to see what happens with that. And so learning those kinds of things through time and over time cultivates a space. Boundaries get further set. The three circles sort of bounce around each other and get to be pointing out corners of isness. And we come into 4. And 4 is cultivating balance and stability in service and purpose of operation. That's how I look at it in sequential growth. And it's also the building of sort of the home. You know, it's the 4 corners. It represents structure. It represents safety, purpose, and also, like I mentioned before, with the polarities, it has these in-between gradients now. Midpoints between the oppositions that have become gradients. And we realize, oh yeah, it's a spectrum's happening. And we have all these areas in between those that are discovered and realized, accepted, and confirmed, and built within. The points of discernment become available to us at this time. Do we want to explore a thing or not? Does that crack and crevice need to be fixed or dug into? What do we want to do there? Do we want to create harmoniously, or do we want to be destructive? Do we want to do the steady little things to clean up around the crumbs around the house all the time, or are we going to let things accumulate and clean once a week? All these different things about normalcy, habitual life, all these kind of things come into play with 4, about how the system's going to work, about how it actually functions, about what it's going to do. Start to become real pillared points with the number 4. You start to see more stability in a standard kind of way about what the isness of the whole system is, what it would do, service it provides, and conversely also what it doesn't, and what it would never, and sort of almost firm walls and windows and doorways, different points of exchanges, metaphorically, of course, speaking, become allowed or disallowed, built and hardened or reconstructed in different ways at this time. Now we have, after a house is sort of built and we have the firm foundations, time for testing it. 5 comes in with the storms, with the weather, with young children running up and down the stairs, slamming and closing doors. Do things stay up? Do they stay built? Are they firm? Do they break? How do you deal with things when they do that? These are all the 5s. 5 is like shakeups, problems, external and internal issues, catalysts. It's always seen as sort of what I said about the 0 space holder being sort of where the measuring stick is put into here. This is sort of the halfway point, and in being that, it has a great connection to the 0 space. And we see that in a 5, the way it adds up at 5, 10, 15, 20. It's in its chaos is repetition. It's the key to unlocking and understanding the change right within it. And if we sense the flow and where we're at within those things, and that change is coming in for reasons, then we understand what 5 is. It's the gateway to 6, 7, 8, 9, which is what we'll get into after when I build out the other versions of the way to look at this. But in the linear way, right, this is like the second leg of the marathon. This is, okay, I've made it now more than halfway. We can keep counting, and it in itself is through the chaos and through the changes and sort of external and internal catalytic happenings, we get to 6, which is perseverance. Okay, I've made it through the halfway mark. Okay, yeah, we've done this. Oh, we've made it even a chunk further than halfway. So now we can we're closer to the end than we were to the beginning. We've got to keep going now, is like 6, is perseverance. 5 has led to improvements in the structure of 4 as well, right? And so now we know, okay, now we can last the next storm. Okay, now when the kids come over this time, that door is gonna close nicely or whatever. That's probably a poor metaphor, but whatever. It's that we've made it through and we're stronger because of it. Sense. 7 is mastery, or learning, to be masterfully learning a thing, to be a master electrician, to be a master plumber or master mason, you know, gotta say it there, gotta throw it in there, just use their own words against them. Why not? That's what I like to do. You know what I mean? Throw it in their face. Your power, you have no power here. You see it for what it is. It's dust in the wind. It blows away with nothingness. 7 is wisdom, is accumulation of all that has come before it, and knowing that it all had worth and value. Even the 5 had, you know, it brought us through 6, and in comes 7 with the, you know, operative and experiential knowing gained and perspective shifts. That's what I added here for the linear first view. You know, you're really getting closer to that end goal, you feel, and you've really gained a good skill set, a mastery around all of those things that you've come through already, you know. The linear first person view is so helpful to see this just as a straight line, just from one beginning to the end of a goal. You know, it's very helpful to put projects on this to something that's very clear cut to you see on this very first initial view, the linear view. We get into 8. 8 is service retribution. It's the karmatic operations, the system speaking for itself. How does it interact with others? How are those others feeling about the interactions? And what are your sort of reviews about that? The whole as a whole becomes operative with 8. And of course, then we have 9, which is 9 is the final measurement, and it's the whole stick. It's the whole of the operation. It's the whole dream, having it finalized and able to pick up off the page and go measure anything you want with the measuring stick now. You know what I mean? It has a tangible quality to it. It has a doneness. The sacred boundary, again, is reignited and set, and it's able to be used by Creator or stepped away from by the initial creator. You know, this is one of the most important things is, like I said, about it's, I like to have this linear first person view as a first introduction too, not only because it's most comfortable for a lot of people, but also it designates stepping away from the project, seeing it as the ruler, and knowing that now that I have this knowledge and understand about what each phase is about, how to look and measure that thing, just like I would never take a ruler and go identify myself. I'm bad because I made a bad measurement on this ruler, or anything like that. You know, like I would never signify or link and entangle my personal worth or development or identity with the ruler. And in fact, everyone takes this ruler and goes and does different measuring with it, and that's a-okay. Go measure what you want to measure with that. It doesn't change my measurements. It doesn't change what I want to measure with. You know what I mean? Having this sort of freedom to let those things go and to let others be where they're at as well is this other really paramount cognitive metaphor that comes into this tangible working in the real world that helps us to remember, oh yeah, I'm integrating spirit and physical world. Oh yeah, there's a bridge here. And all these different workings, they actually do come together, you know? And so, yeah, that's the basic foundational concept of how the stages and phases of 1 through 9, and how they come together and what they look like. And again, this is the most fundamental version of the linear view, just is to see them all, you know, on a flat line. It's kind of obvious when we talk about linear, you know, but one-dimensional. This is why I said it's best used for a single project or for a problem. Next, I'll get into part POV 2, or, you know, seeing it in the second kind of way, which is understanding about the stages and the phases, and how they're sort of steps. And I like to call this ascension or descension model. I have some cool, did I put it in this printed version? Oh yeah, I did. Okay. I made these kind of sort of troubleshooting guide to this, where you can put the phase that you feel like you're at and then the one that would come after it and before it, sort of to think about where you think you're standing at. What phase do I feel like I'm in right now? And say if you feel like you're in a 4 and you're kind of bored, and stability is, you know, driving you to want to call in these 5s, or no 5s are happening and you're wondering why not, you know. Looking at 3 and sensing to yourself, where can I go back to that creative phase? Where can I go back to that sort of prototype, into the phase of my brain where I was at when those creative juices were more flowing or conducive? Or even if it's a thing that you're thinking about with others, you know what I mean? This is, if it's a relationship kind of thing, if, you know, you want to bring a spark back into your life, you know, go back into thinking about how you were like when you first got together. Or how you were like when you first had this dream of this vision together to go into the project. What kind of things really brought you to the birth of that, and wanting that point of conception between each other. And when you reignite those memories, probably new things will come back into it, and help rekindle and bring in fresh eyes into the stability you've already built here. You know, sometimes it helps to drop into the phase to come a little bit. And to plan out, but you have to make sure that you're in a well-balanced place. You start to do forecasting kind of projections and potential assessments, because you're going to only assess the potentials that you see there, and you have a bias gradient whether you want to admit it or not. I hope that you just openly admit that you know that you have a hugely biased projectional field of vision to all potentialities that are actually available in the infiniteness in front of us. You know, to just get yourself out of that, and then to try to create a grander playscape to envision happenings within. And you'll probably be guided. You know, most times if I ever loosen myself up there, I always do sort of start to see those other potentialities light up there that I didn't quite think of before, or didn't want to think about, but now I am, you know. I made another kind of way that you could look at it about moving or staying, and some like checklists and stuff in there. Those are really helpful for sort of the first view and the second view. So I'm going to leave it there for now. Thanks for watching part 2. I hope you'll check out part 3, which I'll put out soon. Thanks for joining me here, and I'll catch you next time.